I'm excited to be here. If you don't know me, my name is McEvoy. And April, I think, besides football season, which is my personal favorite, April is like a really good sports month, okay? You start off with the Final Four, right? That just happened. That was sweet. Couple national championships the last couple of days, Sunday, Monday. That's great. Then if you're a golf fan, the Masters is this week. Okay, that's like a really big deal. That's fun. Not a ton of golf fans in the room I'm picking up, but some of us love it. I love that Husky football spring ball starts up. There's a spring game here. That's really exciting. There's spring sports going on campus here. And then we finish the month with my own personal favorite part of the year sports-wise, which is the NFL draft. And personally, I love it because there's always hope on draft day for everybody that it's going to be good. And normally sports is my favorite part of April, but I will tell you, not that I'm a huge cherry blossoms person. I did walk through the quad a bunch just because I like observing the people observing it. Right? If you're like me, you love how many people are set up with like a professional camera. Or I don't even know if that's the pose, but they do something with the cherry blossoms in background. But I'll tell you what, it is something, is that there's new life that is going on. There's new life that's happening, and we can see it in April, right? We can see flowers start to bloom. We can see growth. We kind of put up with all winter in Seattle. I know some of you were here on January 11th when I preached a start winter quarter, and the day was only 14 seconds longer than the day before. And we said the days are going to get longer. Some of you were like, no, they're not. We've been sitting in this for a while. And now, look, the days are getting longer by almost 4 minutes a day. And we can see it, right? A week later, we come back on a Tuesday night, and we're like, oh my gosh, it's light when we started. And we can see it. We can like see growth around us. And when we see growth outside in the world, sometimes that helps us see that, wait a minute, there are things growing inside of me too. And as we come into this space, I want you to know that it's really cool. Our staff got together earlier this week and just had a chance to thank God for the ways that we have seen him work in this community this year. Okay, I know you didn't get to hear all those things. And some of us come into this room in a tough place, okay? So I don't want to just act like everything is all great. And some of us come into the room in a distracted place. There's a lot of different ways that we might come into this space. And we can hold both of those things. We can have a hard time and be here and be present. And I appreciate you being here if that's you in this space. And if you're here because God is you feel it, you're like, God is doing something in my life right now. I'm excited about that. It is fun. It's fun to see the different spring break trips that happen and hear people's stories, not just going down to the DR, Colombia, here with the M, but maybe you went on a trip and spent time with close friends over spring break and you just shared deeply with them and you went to the beach or did something fun and it was a very rich experience and you just feel filled up. It's fun to be together when we feel like God is at work and he's doing something and he's showing up in the ways that we want him to show up. And for some of us, we've seen growth. This year, we've seen the way that God is helping us grow because of the different ways that we've interacted and even stayed faithful for some of us in the hard season. Some of us wanted to quit in January because the days were so short and dark and it was hard to know. And not that God is only at work when it's light outside. I want to be clear, that's theologically incorrect. But sometimes it's fun to come when it's exciting and you see, hey, God is at work. It's cool to see what he's doing. And spring is a fun season because there are a lot of changes. Okay, we're talking about this idea here at the inn. How do we interact with God when things are changing in our life? And for some of us, those changes are really fun and exciting. And we like it right now. We're like, yes, like sign me up for what's next. Like I love what God is doing in my life. And for some of us, changes are happening around us, and it feels like it's leaving us behind. And they're not necessarily good changes. They might be different changes. Or maybe we knew how to follow God in a season before. We knew what it was like when we were somewhere close with him or on a trip or out of our norm. We got to be away from our day-to-day for a while, and we experience this thing in God. But now we're back, and there's kind of this day-to-day monotony, and we don't know how to follow him in the same way. And our life has changed around us, and then we think we're changed inside, but we don't know how to follow him now like the way that we used to. For a lot of us, I love passion. Okay, I'm a passionate guy. I get really excited about things. If you're excited about an idea, please come tell me. I will get excited with you. I love when we're passionate about Jesus. That is super exciting to me. For some of us, we go through seasons of passion and excitement, but then when we're not that passionate or not that excited, or some of us say we don't really feel God in this season, we don't really know how to interact with him anymore. Or we just wonder if he's present where we're at. Tonight I want to look at the Bible. I want to open up a story about a guy named Joseph. okay, in the Old Testament. And if you are joining us for the first time this week, started our series last week that we're going to talk about for the first 7 weeks of spring quarter. Okay, and we're looking at different kind of heroes in the Bible, people in the Old Testament, these different characters that are real life people, and the way that they interacted with God as things around them were changing. And what happens how do we interact with God, maybe in a different season? And started us last week looking at a story in the life of a guy named Jacob, and how Jacob wrestled with the angel of God, and how he was blessed by that angel, but he also left changed. And Third told us that change leaves us changed. That when we go through change in our life, that it leaves us changed, that we're different when we come out of there. And if you know, Jacob is the son of a guy named Isaac, and Isaac is the son of a guy named Abraham, and this is kind of a holy lineage throughout the Old Testament that God has blessed this family and said, all my descendants will be God's people. And this guy Jacob that he talked about last week, Jacob had 12 sons, okay, and the 11th born of the 12 was this guy named Joseph. And if you grew up in the church, you may know the life of Joseph. That's great. Tonight, what I want to do is I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the story of Joseph and his life, and then I want to share a few stories out of my own life of the ways I've interacted with God in different seasons. And then I just want to present some questions for us of how we might be seeing him and what it might mean for us to interact with him in this season of our life. And I want to ask this question, which is, as we start thinking about how to make decisions in the springtime, which is such a big part of the month of April, what should I do? What should I do this summer? Where am I going to live next year? Am I going to change my major? If I'm a senior and I'm graduating, what am I going to do after graduation? If I'm an intern at the end here and I don't know what I'm doing next. If a friend that I've had for 2 years just asked me on a date and I just thought we were friends, what do I do? Uh-oh, things are changing. That one hit too close to home, I think. How do we interact with God when things are changing? And what is God's will for my life? These are big questions we start asking. What is God's will for my life? And as I make decisions about what I should do with my life and my time and the situations that he's given me, how do I step into his will? And how do I know if the decisions I'm making are in line with God's will, or are they just things that I think are good? Okay, those are some of the questions we're going to wrestle with. I probably won't answer all your questions, but I want to invite you in to a discussion to talk with these things. Is that cool? Does that sound like a good place to go? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to try to paraphrase 10 chapters in the book of Genesis. Okay, that's the life of Joseph, but it's important. When we look at Joseph's story, here's what I want you to know. Not every person in the Bible and not every person that we ever meet do we need their whole story. Sometimes we can just know a little piece, and that's good enough. But there are some people in our life that we need to know their whole story. And for all of us, I hope we have a place where there are people in our lives that know our whole story. And for Joseph, his life doesn't really make sense unless we know his whole story. So bear with me as we read this text. It's actually a lot. Here, okay, I'm just going to put you all on the spot. Is there anyone in this room that's like, hey, I would like to help Mike read this text off the screen tonight? I've always wanted to read off of the screen. I want to stand up front at the inn, and this would be just like a fantastic night. I'm like super brave, and this is a thing I've wanted to do my whole life. Okay, Riley, bring it up front. Here we go. See, I knew I'd get one. Someone, hey, could you get him a mic? Someone get Riley a mic. Let's go. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. There we go. Get Riley a mic. Alex, okay, here, you're going to stand over here, okay?
Okay.
Here's what we're going to do. We didn't rehearse this. This is going to be good, though. Maybe. This is a big gamble. How's your reading ability?
I mean, I passed grade school. So
you're in college?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put some text on the screen. I want you to read the text. When you're done reading, then I'm going to talk a little bit, and then we're going to go back and forth.
Like paragraph by paragraph?
Just you read that whole thing that's up there.
All right.
Here we go. Ready, everyone? This is Genesis chapter 37, the beginning of the life of Joseph. Woo. Here we go.
All right. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his children, because when he was the son of the old age, and he had made him a long robe with sleeves. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him, and they could not speak peaceably to him. Once Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. They said to them, "Listen to this dream that I have dreamed." There we were, binded sheaves in the field. Suddenly, my sheaf rose, I don't know if sheaf's the right word, sheaf rose and stood upright. Then your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. His brothers said to him, are you indeed to reign over us? Are you indeed to have dominion over us? So they hated him even more because of his dreams and his words.
Oh, that's good. All right, thank you, Riley. We're going to have lots more. Don't clap for him yet. Hey. All right, so Joseph is this guy, okay? He's the 11th born out of 12 sons to Jacob or Israel, okay? Same person here. And he's 17 years old. Most of his brothers are older than him. And his dad loved him the most. I don't know if you're like a favorite child. Then you get this. If you're not, then you know what it's like to be jealous of your siblings. Well, his siblings were very jealous of him, okay? Most of us want to be the favorite child, and so they were jealous of him. His dad makes him this great coat, and he comes to all of his brothers and says, guys, I had a dream that one day all of you would bow down to me. Pretty good, like, way to start, like, a good conversation with people, okay? And his brothers did not like this, and so they said, hey, let's go ahead and kill our brother. And so they threw him, I'm not joking. Okay, they threw him in a pit, and they were going to kill him. And then one of the brothers said, wait a minute, why don't, instead of killing him, we sell him into slavery, okay? Because there's a caravan that's coming by right now on its way down to Egypt. And so this caravan comes by, okay, this happens directly after this, and Joseph's brothers decide we are going to sell him, okay, to this caravan into slavery. And then they take him down to Egypt, okay, where then they sell him, okay, to the kind of Egyptian royalty. Okay, this guy named Potiphar ends up purchasing Joseph as a slave, as an enslaved person to him. And then he starts working, okay, for this guy Potiphar in Egypt. That's kind of how his dream played out. Let's pick up our next text.
Now Joseph was taken to Egypt. Okay, cool, nice word. And Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, brought him to the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man. He was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to prosper in his hands. So Joseph found favor in the sight and attended him. He made him overseer of his house and put him in charge of all that he had. From the time that he made him overseer of the house and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on that he had in house and field.
Great job, thanks, Riley. His name is Potiphar, and this is what I want you to notice. Okay, he's sold into slavery. He goes down there and he works hard, and it says this line. It's really important. It says, and God was with him. Okay, it says the Lord was with him, and the Lord caused all he did to prosper in his hands. Okay, so even though he's not where he thought he would be, he's still being faithful to God in this moment, and God is making the things that he's doing, okay, prosper, even though he's doing them as an enslaved person, and so his master is getting very wealthy, okay, off what he's doing, and so he's pretty liked because of that, and his master really likes him. That story seems like it's starting to pick up a little bit. Let's read the next section, Riley. This is a fun one. You're going to like this one.
Okay, that's great. Does it have good words?
You're going to, yeah.
Okay, cool. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and with him there, he had no concern for anything but the food that he ate. Now Joseph was handsome and good looking. After a time, his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, lie with me. But he refused and said to his master's wife, look, with me here, my master has no concern about anything in this house, and he has put everything that he has in my hand.
Okay, so that's an interesting situation he finds himself in. Why don't we go to the next text? Let's just kind of pick up. Let's see. We're going to this one? Okay, so let me just tell you what happens in the mid part, because it might be too a little racy for you in this room. I'm just kidding. You're in college. You can handle it. Okay, so Potiphar's wife really wants Joseph, and again, she pursues him, and he ends up saying, hey, no, you are the wife of my master. And so at one point, he comes in the house. She tries to trick him into sleeping with her. Okay, he runs out, leaves his coat. She ends up getting a bunch of the guards and saying, hey, he tried to come on to me, okay, and here's his coat. I have proof. She tells her husband that, and then he ends up throwing Joseph in prison. okay, for standing up and doing the right thing. I think most of us can agree that in a situation like this, Joseph, we'd look at him and go, man, what a great guy. He stood up and he did the integrity move there. He didn't give in this moment, and yet his reward for that was getting lied about and falsely incarcerated. Go ahead.
And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, the place where king's prisoners were confined. He remained there in the prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love. He gave him favor in the sight of the chief jailer. The chief jailer committed to Joseph's care all the prisoners who were in the prison. And whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. The chief jailer paid no heed to anything that was in Joseph's care, because the Lord was with him. And whatever he did, the Lord made it prosper.
Okay, so the Lord is still blessing him in these moments in prison. And while he's in prison, he meets two guys, okay, that used to work for Pharaoh, the head of the land. And both of those guys have a dream in prison. Okay, Joseph ends up being able to interpret the dreams for the guys, tells one of them that he's going to be restored to the king, and he tells the other guy, I'm sorry, but your dream means that the king is actually going to have you killed. In a couple days, both of those dreams end up playing out. One guy gets restored to his kind of honorable place. One guy gets killed by Pharaoh. And the one that gets restored, he says, hey, remember me. Joseph says, remember me. Okay, and then so the guy goes and he's with Pharaoh, but he forgets about him. He forgets him in prison, and so 2 years later, when Pharaoh has a dream of his own, the guy goes, oh, I remember a guy that can interpret dreams. Let's go ahead and get Joseph. And so they get Joseph out of prison 2 years later, okay, and he interprets Pharaoh's dreams. Pharaoh's really impressed with it, and he says, hey, we're gonna go ahead and give you some honor now because I love that you were able to interpret our dream. And this is our last scripture we're gonna read for tonight. So go ahead and finish this off here, Riley.
Sweet. Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find anyone else like this, one in whom is the Spirit of God? So Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has shown you all this, there's no one so discerning and as wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as your command. Only with regard to the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. Removing his signet ring from his hand, Pharaoh put it in Joseph's hand. He arrayed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in the chariot of his second in command, and then cried out in the front of him, bow the knee. Thus he set him over all the land of Egypt.
Great job. Give it up for Riley. You're good. Thank you, Riley. Thank you. And so Joseph ends up getting promoted to second in command, okay, for all of Egypt. And while he's in command, the dream comes to pass, like he said it would, that there would be 7 years of prosper in the land and then 7 years of famine. And because he was prepared for that, Joseph stored up a lot of food. And so even though they went through 7 years of famine in Egypt, people didn't perish because they were prepared for it. And the interesting thing about this story is that Joseph's whole family travels down to Egypt when they go through famine and they're out of food, and they end up coming and buying food from him, and he ends up saving his whole family. And they do end up kind of bowing down to him and respecting him in this place. And the original dream that he had does end up happening. It just didn't happen the way that he probably thought it was going to happen. And I encourage you, we went through that really fast. It's 10 chapters starting in Genesis chapter 37 in the Bible. I encourage you to read it on your own. It's an incredible story. I love Joseph. I love this character in the Bible. He's very impressive to me because I feel like he continues to face obstacles that he didn't expect as he followed God with his life. And as he did, and then it didn't look the way he thought it would look, he still stays faithful. And I will say that if I was preaching this message a few years ago, I'll be honest, I think what I would do is, as I looked at this, is I would probably think that the message here would be stay faithful, even in kind of the pit of life, and then God will one day kind of provide the palace for us. But I don't know if that's the message. And in fact, I don't know if that's a biblical promise. Because that's not a promise of following God, is that we just end up like Joseph. That if we just stay faithful, we end up getting prosperity and lots of wealth, and everything works out perfectly the way we want it to, but we just have to be patient. I know it's not in my life. I know that for me, my life is really, really rich from having God in it and from following him, but it hasn't just ended up easy or necessarily the way that I thought it would in a lot of ways. But in some ways, I can see God's faithfulness to me in different seasons. And I don't know what exactly God has for you in this text tonight, but I just want to throw out a few things that I see in this that Joseph does that kind of show us, how do we see God's will? How do we step into God's will in our life and make decisions? And the first thing I want to say is that this is what I believe about God's will for us. I believe that it's being faithful to serving God in the season that we're in. The will of God, to me, one of the best ways that I've come to understand it, understanding his will for our life, is a lot of us want to know the will for our life like 10 years from now or 20 years, or what am I going to be, or who am I going to marry, or these type of things. I believe it's a lot like driving a car on a windy road late at night. And your headlights kind of light up the 100 feet in front of the car. And if you want to get to your destination, you can't see your destination. You can't see everywhere you're going, but you can see the 100 feet in front of the car. And you got to be faithful to drive into that space, trusting that the road will continue ahead of you and the lights will continue to light up the path in front of us. But my experience, very rarely does God lay out this perfect plan for us and give us a lot of what it's going to look like down the road. A lot of time for us, it means trusting him in the season that we currently are in, doing what we can in the season we currently are in, so that we get one day to the place that we are at. And I believe that is a big part of Joseph's story. Whether we end up in the palace like he did or somewhere else in life, he was faithful to where he was at. He was thrown in prison, and he still was faithful to serve well in that moment, and so people respected him in that moment. Be present where you're present, and don't miss what God is doing right now in this current season of your life. What does it mean to be faithful? A big part of my life, I graduated college here at UW. I was a construction management major, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go into the construction management world. But instead, I went and started college ministry through Young Life down at the University of Alabama, which was way different than what I was doing. And I was down there, and the first year was a really, really hard year for me. And one of the hard things is that I left a lot of my community. I left a lot of my friends. I had a lot of people that graduated, and they stuck around here in Seattle while I went somewhere different. And I was pretty lonely, to be honest. Moving to a new place is pretty hard. Sometimes it's hard to make friends. I was pretty lonely. And when it was like Friday or Saturday, or at nighttime, like I would call. I'd make like a list of people to call back home. And actually, this is kind of weird. It's me. But I made a spreadsheet. And I'd be like, okay, I'm going to call these 3 people tonight or these couple people tomorrow night, because I was really lonely and I knew them really well, and it was filling me up to be on the phone with some different people back home. And there's nothing wrong with staying in touch with people back home. That's great. But for me, what it did is it kept me from engaging where I was at. And after a year, I still was pretty lonely, and I still didn't really have very many friends because I spent all my time wishing that I was somewhere else, traveling back to Seattle whenever I could to see people, and I didn't invest at all where I currently was. I made very little difference where I was because my mind was not where my body was physically present. One thing I love about Joseph is his faithfulness. He could have been sitting there in prison or in the pit or in slavery going, man, I should be somewhere else right now. Why would I help somebody else get wealthy off my hard work? But instead, he chose to be faithful in that season. What does that mean for you right now? Seniors, if you're graduating this quarter, you got 9 weeks left. You got a couple options. You can totally check out, or you can say, hey, I got 9 weeks. What does God want to do with me in 9 weeks? We can both think about the future, plan our future, and be faithful to serving God, to loving other people really well, right where we currently are at. Some of us, we come up with a new living situation. We're moving out from our current roommates in 9 weeks or over the summer, and so that means we kind of just totally disengage. What does it look like to be faithful to the current season we're in? You know, one of the ways I see this is in dating relationships a lot. Some of us believe, man, if I can just get in the right relationship, then I will become the person that I want to be. What does it mean to serve God and grow ourselves really well? Maybe in a season for some of us in singleness, so that if and when there's a right relationship for us, we have spent this season becoming the person that we want to become. What does it mean to serve the season really well right now? It's the first thing I think it looks like to follow God and to step into his will. The second thing I see here is that God's will for our life probably isn't going to look super comfortable. And I'll tell you what, a message I would rather preach is like, come follow Jesus, and like life will just get better and more comfortable. Why I like to say that is because in America, we have an idol, and that idol is our comfort. And when I think about it, when I think about the decisions I make throughout my day, most of them revolve around trying to make myself more comfortable. Wake up in the morning, what am I going to wear today? Am I going to wear sweats? Yes, they're the most comfortable. Right, but then we go on going, okay, I gotta make enough money. I gotta work hard enough, I gotta make enough money, have a good enough job so that I can be as comfortable as I possibly can in my life. Here's what I love. Joseph is following God and trusting him with his life, and his life gets incredibly less comfortable. For some of us, we start following God, we start making a decision to step out in faith, to do something that requires a lot of faith for us. We step out, we're excited, and then it doesn't look the way that we thought it was going to look. And we go, oh, maybe that wasn't God's will for my life. This is the message I want to speak tonight, I think. I want to speak to those of us in the room that have been really courageous this year and said, I want to start following Jesus. And I want my life to mean something, and I want to make decisions out of faith. And I might have given up something that made a lot of sense to the world around me to do something that seems a little wild to my family and to others. And I'm choosing to follow Jesus right now, and it's requiring most of my courage. And I'm trusting that he's going to show up as I do. And you're stepping out, and it's not looking the way that you thought it would look. And now you're at a place of wrestling, going, what does that mean? We thought, I thought this was going to be better. I thought I was going to say yes to trusting him, and this is actually more difficult. Or maybe it wasn't God's will for my life, because it doesn't look easy. This is what I think the Spirit of God wants to do in this space right now. If that's you, I'm just going to give you a couple minutes to wrestle with what are our expectations as we follow God, as we make decisions of trust in our life. Where are we hoping that God shows up? Do we notice that he's with us even when it feels like we're in prison? I love that moment when Joseph finds himself in slavery, that it says, and God was with him. It's very specifically said in there to help us remember that God is with him. After my couple years in Alabama, I came back here, and I worked on the UMinn staff here for 3 years. And the first year I was here, I had this old Toyota 4Runner, okay? It was like from the 90s, and I loved it. And it had a couple 100,000 miles on it. And it was the car that I would like take people around in all the time, and it was old, but it was great. And I was working for a church, and I was serving God, and I was doing the Lord's work. And one day, I'm driving up I-5 toward Bellingham, greatest city ever, and As I'm going up, my car breaks down, okay, on the side of the road. Breaks down, and I end up having to get it towed. And there ends up being a lot of problems with it. And they say it's going to be a $5,000 fix. And I had about $1,000 total. And I was like, this is really discouraging. My car is only worth like $2,000. And they want me to spend $5,000. And if you've ever been in a situation like this and you get it towed and they say, oh yeah, this is what we call totaled. It means that it would cost you more money to fix it than it's actually worth. And can I tell you what I did? This is one of the more embarrassing moments of my life. I got really mad with God. And I think it's okay to be angry with God. That's okay. He can handle that. But it wasn't just anger, it was entitlement. My yelling at him sounded like this: God, I am serving you. I am working for a church. I'm sharing your love with people. And I have no money, and you made my car break down. Why would you do this? How are you going to come through? Like, why me? Like, are you not thankful for me? I'm not lying. This was the most entitled, like I was going to say prayer. It didn't sound like a prayer. It was, because it was talking to God, but it was so entitled. The root behind that was me saying, God, if I'm going to serve you, it better look the way I want it to look. You better come through in the ways that I want it to come through. Otherwise, I don't know if I can trust you. That was a big moment for me. I wrestled a lot with God, and I felt like him, you know what? I felt like the thing that God was doing for a couple days in me was saying, do you trust me even when this doesn't look the way you want it to look? What does it mean to worship me in the moments that it's hard to follow me? When you're in the middle of it, we're good. We're pretty good at coming in here and worshiping God when life is looking the way we want it to look. I bet we could be the type of community that comes together and worships God in any season that we're in. Because of who he is, not because of what he's done for us. Because of his incredible heart and his love for us, not because we've received the blessing in our life that we want. And my encouragement tonight is if you've stepped out, if you started down a path to trust Jesus and follow Jesus, that's a really good path. I don't know where that's going to look, but what that's going to look like, but don't let the first obstacle stop you. Because my belief is that sometimes we have a false view of the will of God, which is that if it is his will, he's going to make this really easy, clear path for us. And this is my belief of just experience and understanding God's word in my life. That there are going to be obstacles. Things will not look the way we want them to look. And if we really want to experience like life to the full with Jesus, it means not letting little obstacles in the way make us think that it's not God's will. And let's be honest, how many of us have like started taking steps towards something? Okay, I'm going to do this. And then it didn't work out the way we thought. And we thought, okay, God's shutting the door on me. Okay, I applied to one college. I didn't get in. Oh, maybe I shouldn't go to college. Can I tell you something? That job I took in Alabama, I applied for a different job at the end of the year to go to San Antonio and work for college ministry. And I turned down a construction management job to go do this job in San Antonio. And I was interviewing all summer long. And then at the end of July, I didn't get the job. And I was like, okay, I turned down the first job I had. I didn't get this job working in college ministry. I'm now here sitting here in August, like, what do I do? Some of us, let's be honest, we would think, oh, that's God telling me that I shouldn't be doing this. I think a better way to understand God's will in our life is, what did I learn from this? What is God doing to me? What did he stir up? Why did I get so excited about this? Why did I put off this other job? Why was I like willing to go do this? What's he doing in me right now? And it opened up some other doors. There are multiple jobs that I have applied for. When I was in that other job here in Seattle, I applied to jobs to go start college ministries at UCLA. Did not get the job. Arizona State. Did not get the job. I remember flying down for an interview in 2011 to go run this college ministry at Arizona State, thinking, I'm for sure going to get this. Oh, this is God's will. And then they told me, no, you're not the guy. And instead of saying, oh, maybe this is not God's will, said, okay, what has God stirred up in me then? And what does it look like to keep being faithful to him, knowing that he's going to keep laying this path out if I keep serving him? I don't know where this plays out in your life, but I know that God's doing something in our lives. He's doing something in his community. I don't want to miss that. I don't want to stop being a courageous community just because we see little obstacles. It's going to happen as we follow him. It's happening in the life of Joseph. For some of us, we might have gotten out of a relationship, knowing it's the right relationship to get out of. Being like, I think God is leading me to get out of this, to be in a healthier relationship someday. We get out of the relationship, and our view of God is, okay, then the right relationship is going to come the next day. And instead, a couple weeks later, we're like, wait a minute. Singles, it's kind of lonely. If God really wanted me to do this, maybe it wouldn't feel so lonely. It's still going to feel lonely. You know, we got a bunch of students that signed up to go on deputation this summer. That's so cool. 2 months in another country serving God. Let me tell you what's going to happen. I will prepare you ahead of time. There will be some awesome moments, and there are going to be some really hard moments. And if you think that serving God means that it is going to be a 2-month vacation and look really easy, and you're never going to have any conflict with your teammates, and the moment that there's any conflict, oh, maybe this wasn't God's will. Maybe he didn't want me to go on this. Those are the type of things that get us questioning. What if we were a community that looked at the model of Joseph, and even when it didn't look the way that we thought it is going to look, continuing to step out, continuing to trust God? That'll be my hope for us. Here's what I want to do. I want to invite the worship team back up, and we're going to sing a couple songs here, and we got some people back at the prayer corner if you want to pray with somebody. I'm overwhelmed by the courage, in a cool way, of the courage I see of students here in this community really coming alive and stepping out and making decisions to trust God and follow him in some really cool ways. I also know that that's a really hard thing to do, and we're going to face obstacles if we do. And wherever you're at, I want to give you a few minutes tonight just to think about that. Take advantage of the space we have. Can we wrestle personally about where we feel like God is leading us? What does he want to do here? And what does it look like for us to come and worship him no matter the season that we find ourselves in right now? Why don't you stand up if you would, and I'm going to pray for us. And if you want someone to pray with you, please do. Lord Jesus, it is spring. Things are new. God, we come into this room because we want to see more of you. We want to experience more of your power and your presence in our life, God. But we also know that there are really hard realities in the world around us that does not always celebrate the decisions that we make to trust you, to know you, to follow you, to step out in courage. God, I pray that you show us in this room that you are with us when we see the things we want to see and when it doesn't look the way that we wanted it to look. God, but that we will be growing in our ability to trust you, maybe take a little step toward you and discover more about what life in you looks like, Lord. We love you, Jesus. We pray all this in your name. Amen.